Welcome back. Finally back on this bitch. But before I start talking about this Clemson game, I want to give a shout out to our boy Dabo. This stupid ass nursery rhyme. I got one for you, Dabo. Hickory dickory dock. Dabo was sucking this cock. The clock struck 2. FSU dropped their goo and took a shit on Howard's pet rock. Okay, stupid, but I'm done. Let's get into the game. First of all, glad I could finally get on here. It's been too long, 4 games in, but I'm finally on here. Going to talk about yesterday's just ridiculously stressful game. 31-24 was the final. If you're watching this, you already know that. In overtime, it was a sleepy nooner game, but it was nothing close to sleepy. Their crowd was, as expected, still raucous. Start with the offense first for Florida State. Start with Jordan Travis. I mean, that's where you should start with any talk about an offense is the QB. Still a lot of this 50-50 stuff we're saying. It just doesn't feel like the offense is running its normal scheme, so to speak. Like, I don't know if that's by design or if it's from the coaches or from Travis, but you're still seeing just a lot of, hey, let's throw it up to Johnny and Keon. And I think a part of the reason for that for yesterday's game is that for some odd reason, that's kind of what Clemson was giving them quite a few times. The Noles continue to come out in 12 personnel, which is like 2 tight ends, which forces the defense to have one less defensive back because you're trying to match up with their size. One less defensive back, better chance of getting a one-on-one with one of your receivers. And so I think that's one of the reasons is that's kind of what Clemson was giving them here and there. And then, of course, the other one is Travis. I don't know if it's just the ripple effect or the residual effect from the LSU game where he had so much success, which it was more like 80-20 balls that game when he was throwing it up to Johnny and Keon. But it's not an efficient looking offense yesterday, and it hasn't been efficient really since that second half versus LSU. Of course, you do give Clemson some credit that they do have a legitimately good defense. The D-line maybe isn't what it was when they were winning titles, but that's a legitimately good defense. They have good players at every level, and very good secondary, which is why quite a few of those 50-50s didn't go to the Noles. Looking at my notes here, the other reason that the offense wasn't looking good and hasn't looked good lately, JT's not running the ball. I don't know if that's by design from the coaching staff or if that's JT protecting himself because his left shoulder still hurt. But it's definitely impacting the game in a couple respects. One, getting ahead of the chains. How many times in the previous years have we seen Jordan scramble on first or second down and pick up 5-6 yards? Changes the whole dynamic of that possession, of that series. You get 5 or 6 on first, then you're looking at 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4, changes what you can do. And then the other big thing it's affecting is obviously the running back's ability to gain traction. Because we know that watching Norvell with Jordan Travis at the helm, Travis puts the opposing defense in compromising positions. Is he going to take it or is he giving it to the running back? Well, yesterday I think Travis kept it one time. And there was moments during the game, I think this was the second half, they're backed up, FSU's backed up in their own end zone basically, or at least inside their own 20. Jordan scrambles out right. There is, at least on the TV, now we don't have all 22s on the TV screen, there is nothing but green grass ahead. And I was me and my friends screaming, run, take what's there. Take 5-10 yards and get out of bounds. Instead, we know he obviously launched it down the sideline to Keon and the pass was broken up. So that needs to get fixed, and I'm hoping it's a health thing. I'm hoping Jordan isn't running as much because he's protecting himself. And that shoulder injury, I don't know exactly what it is, but reading the reports about the severity of it, the bye week will certainly help, but it sounds like something that'll at least linger. But as more time goes on, he can probably deal with it better, and hopefully that means he's running a little more. Okay. The other thing I want to move on, and it relates to the running game, is FSU's offensive line. Again, give credit to Clemson. They got a good front. But FSU's offensive line is not playing well enough to give you hope that if they were fortuitous enough to make an ACC championship or even college football playoff game, that they could actually do what they want to do on offense. I didn't think Scott would be that missed because, we've heard about this O-line depth, but he's been missed. I think the ideal scenario is when he returns, he goes back to left, put Bless at right, and I think Byers absolutely has to get a shot at right guard. Like, he's not awful at right tackle, but going from, where was he at? UTEP, whatever conference they're in, Mountain West, whatever, like playing tackle there is obviously a little bit different than playing in a Power 5 conference. And he's been okay. I think average might be a best description, but I think he could go from average to very good if he moved into right guard. So hopefully, again, the bye week couldn't come at a better time. Mo came back for this game, thankfully. And you could already see the difference up front. He's not the biggest center in the world, but he gets the line in the right situations, and he's a pretty good anchor. Like, he doesn't get a lot of push, but Smith is just solid. So you just need Scott back now, and I hope they do that shuffling with Bless and Byers. Said a lot of negative stuff about the offense. Do some positive. Johnny Wilson, he's rebounded since all those drops. He has rebounded. He made 2 or 3 acrobatic catches, and so we were joking watching the game. It's like, if he's wide open, I get nervous. If someone's draped all over him, I expect him to catch it. Good rebound game for him, especially late in the game. They were trying to win it in regulation. That throw down the sideline just extended his ridiculously long arms, made a difficult catch. Unfortunately, the offense sputtered and didn't, pick up, maybe 10 more yards to get in reasonable field goal range. But that's neither here nor there. It was nice to see Johnny rebound. Keon Coleman is obviously ridiculous. 2 touchdowns. The first touchdown, what a well-drawn-up play. They faked the wide receiver screen, and then he cut behind his teammates and just was wide open on a slant in the middle of the end zone. I mean, you didn't need the all 22s, even on TV, like after about 2 seconds after the snap, like screaming at the TV, he's open. And of course, Travis could see that. But Keon's ridiculous. I don't think he'll be tweeting out any complaints about lack of targets. Obviously, the overtime catch was phenomenal. And it's funny, too, because watching it, we're like, oh, God, another 50-50 ball. Not greatly thrown, by the way. It was okay. Gave his guy a chance, but it wasn't, like, pinpoint. Just obviously makes the ridiculous catch. Just goes right over the guy. So, really glad you got that guy on your team. Really glad you got that guy. Continue to see Benson struggle. Still does a little bit of tiptoeing through the tulips. Again, I think part of the reason is that the O-line is not playing its best right now, and they have guys hurt. And again, as I mentioned, Travis not being a running threat. The defense is just keen on the running back, so they're having a tough time. They only had 22 rushing yards yesterday, which is hard to believe they won the game. As a total offense, I think I should have wrote this down. I think they had over 300 yards. Obviously, you can look this up. I think it was about 5.2 yards per play, which isn't great. I guess that's okay versus a good Clemson defense. But hey, they did just enough, but they got to get better. And that's the thing where, like, people that are on podcasts yesterday or even today that are doing more bitching than celebrating a 4-0 start, I get it from the perspective of, because we've seen this team ceiling. That second half of the LSU game is this team ceiling, which is, hey, if they get in the college football playoff, if they play like that, they might actually beat a team or two. And I think they can get better. Like, they're 4-0. They haven't played an A game yet, a complete game, all 4 quarters. Haven't come close to that. I think their best game is probably, I mean, the second half in LSU, but I guess that would be their best game and they've played so far. And I'd say that was a B game because the first half did happen. So, and you beat 2 quality opponents. Yes, I know Clemson lost to Duke, but that narrative was ridiculous. I've tweeted out, and anyone with common sense saw that, yeah, Duke, give credit. They won the game 28-7, but that game wasn't a 21-point gap type of game. Like, Clemson just shot themselves in the foot so many times. But yeah, so I'm going to point out some things where, I think they can get better. I hope they get better. They need to get better. And when it comes to offense, the offensive line needs to play better. It needs to get healthy. And Jordan, as I mentioned. Little side note here is the only time I remember seeing Destin Hill is when he got held, and of course there was no call. The refereeing, if you watched the game, it was awful for the most part. It was just piss poor. What do you expect from the ACC? But I'm wondering when Hill will get it going, or when Travis will start looking his way, because it's hard for me to believe with all the reports we read and how he just seems to be, a more athletic Pittman. He's got to be getting open at some point. So I'm hoping we can start taking advantage of him over the middle of the field, whether that's, like mesh routes, slants, anything like that. Just kind of wondering when he gets going. But anyways, on the whole, yeah, offense didn't play great, did just enough. All right, let's go to the defense. This is a two-part. Really, it's the first half versus second half. The first half was maddening because going into the game, if you've paid any attention over this Norvell tenure, one of the biggest frustrations was our defense making a bad quarterback or an inexperienced quarterback look like a Heisman Trophy winner, like they just did a week ago against BC. Castellanos put up very good numbers, and it was his second collegiate start, and he was known as a runner. So coming into this game, I was like, please don't have this kid Klubnik look like a Heisman contender. Yeah, I know he was a 5-star out of high school. And the first half, he did. He looked like a completely different quarterback than he had so far in his early career. And a big reason for that is the D-line wasn't getting any pressure, and that's on them for not winning their one-on-ones. And we were only bringing 4 men. After 2 series, it was clear in the first half, we're not getting home with 4. You're going to have to bring another, which is unfortunate. I thought this 4 could get home more than they did, at least in the first half. But that didn't happen. Pretty much went the entire first half with rarely dialing up an extra man on a blitz or what have you. Didn't happen a whole hell of a lot, so Cade was able to sit back. It was quick throws. It was a lot of slants over the middle. Guys weren't running wide open. There weren't busts. I thought Noles played better as far as, hey, you didn't stand out like a sore thumb on passing plays. But we were just giving them layups. Hey, go ahead and have this 8-yard completion, this 9-yard, this 10-yard. No explosive passes really, or at least as far as ball traveled in the air, right? There might have been a catch for 8 and then they turned it into 15 or 20, but no big one. So they just kept dinking and dunking. It was just super frustrating. And the DBs were playing kind of passively. You'd see a Clemson wide receiver come across the face of a DB and then, oh, thanks. You're just going to let me just post you up and put myself between the ball and you? Oh, appreciate that. So that was massively frustrating, just watching this kid just, yeah, thanks. These. I mean, if guys are open, even I can make these plays. Of course, we had trouble covering some of the running backs out of the backfield. There's some confusion on that, and that's been a theme in other games where it's like, they moved a guy in motion. The linebackers are, well, what do we do? And then someone leaks out the back. So that was maddening. I was so frustrated at that first half. Excuse me. And Fuller was just I hate saying, fire Fuller every time, that there's a poor performance, but you're watching, you're like, again? But thankfully, the second half happened, and he made the adjustments, thank Christ. Not sure why it took an entire half. Again, after the first quarter, probably should have been clear. We're not winning the one-on-ones with our 4DL. Gonna have to start speeding up Klubnik's clock. The second half, thank God they did. I think it was Clemson's first offensive series. It was clear. We were bringing pressure, whether that was cornerback blitzes, safety blitzes. I saw Shaheem come in one time. And, of course, DeLoach's blitz that completely turned the game on its head. Not just the pressure that Fuller dialed up, but the defensive backs started playing a little more physical. And that obviously helped. They weren't just like, oh, I'm just going to let you get right in front, just body me up. No. The DBs, I felt, played a little better. They played a lot of man, but they also played a lot of robber. Robber is usually when you have a deep safety, the linebackers are playing like underneath zone, and the strong safety comes down to kind of fill in the hole behind the linebackers. They did some of that. It was a mixture. It wasn't like constantly man like the broadcast was saying. It was a mixture, but the pressures had to happen. And also, what changed in the second half is not just dialing up some blitzes, but some of the DL finally started winning their one-on-one battles. I mean, I highlighted Farmer in my notes here. Farmer had 5 QB pressures. Farmer has been, without question, the best defensive lineman so far. Yeah, better than Lovett, better than Fisk. Fisk has been good, by the way. But Farmer is just quietly just killing it on the DL. I thought on the whole, the linebackers played better. Not just DeLoach's delayed blitz, which, by the way, that was just phenomenal. Just textbook. Just put his helmet through the football, which is, I'm sure it's how they're taught. Hey, if you have an opportunity to blindside a kid, put your helmet like right here, right where the ball is. And that was amazing, just watching that turn of events where Fisk is kind of like trying to get it. And of course, he's a 300-pound dude, and thank Christ it bounced right back to DeLoach. And kudos for DeLoach for popping right back up after he hit him to look for the ball. So, of course, that was amazing. But I didn't think the linebackers played generally. Like, Tatum had multiple just missile shots at running backs. For the most part, I thought they contained the running game. They had that one really long run. But I think if you take away that long run, which I know you can't, but if you take away that long run, they averaged more like about 4 yards a carry, as opposed to, I think with that run, they probably went about 5. So the total yards don't really tell you how the rush defense played. Again, that one run really threw it off. Thought on the whole, they stuffed the running game pretty good, which was frustrating, especially when you consider they were kind of shutting that down for the most part in the first half, especially, and Klubnik was still beating you. But again, we're in the second half now. The adjustments obviously had to be made, and hat tip to Fuller for making them. Like, if you're going to criticize Fuller in the first half, and he deserved it, you have to say, good job in the second half. It had to be done. You couldn't keep, playing patty cake with 4 men fronts and not bringing pressure and just having them have these long possessions of 5-6 minutes. Couldn't do it. Clemson finished with like 5.4 yards per play, which, given that it's Clemson, who I think is still a good team, like, that's not a bad defensive effort. 5.4 yards per play versus that team, that's not that bad. What else I got here? I mentioned Noles played less slapdick. Green. I thought Green played his usual physical self. The Shipley, when he got hit, looks like if Shipley had steadied himself, he could have maybe bounced it outside late in the game, and Green just came in and cleaned it up. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about that fucking ridiculous defensive pass interference Green got. This was I think this was the fourth quarter. They brought heat on Klubnik again. He sped up his clock. So he had a piss poor throw that wasn't remotely catchable. Both Green and the receiver he was covering were kind of dancing with each other. And it just seemed like an obvious no call. Ball's not close. Both of these cats are, hugging each other essentially. And, that sets up the field goal attempt that they later got. which I believe that was the one he missed. By the way, side note, speaking of field goal attempts and lining up for that, Dabo played like coached like a fucking moron, burning timeouts, just situationally stupid, which was hilarious because he's a piece of shit. But so great second half by the D. To just kind of put a bow on it. The end of the game stuff, I highlighted Keon's catch, but again, Dabo, when they got a 9-yard rush from Shipley in their only overtime possession, and then like the next one they try some kind of like wide receiver screen pass, and it loses yards, and I'm like, what are they doing? Like they've been getting the short yardage all day, like they're second, third, and 1 or 2, whatever. Clemson had been picking those up most of the day. So that was befuddling. And, of course, great play by the defensive line on the 4th down play that ended the game, tipping it. Just fantastic. And I didn't know this. Of all the years watching Florida State and Clemson, I did not know Clemson has a tradition that their fans rush the field when Clemson loses. I didn't know that. Like, I watched the 2013 game, the last time we won there. It didn't dawn on me that's what they did. Like, what? That is the lamest tradition, like, beyond the stupid pet rock. Like, that's probably more lame. Hey, let's rush the field. We just lost, guys. Let's go support our team. Cool tradition. Like, anyways, I thought Dabo didn't have a great day. You hate to see it. Just mismanaged some situations. And it was great that in regulation that the kicker shanked it, because you knew if that kicker made it and Clemson held on to win 27-24 in regulation, that's all you're going to hear is this like fairy tale story. You're already hearing it during the game. And then he made his first field goal, and I was like, here we go. We're going to hear it for another 20 minutes. But thankfully it didn't happen. Noles found a way to win. They didn't play their best game, which if you can not play your best game and win at Memorial Stadium, you feel pretty good about the future of this season, assuming they can clean some things up and guys get healthy. Clemson hadn't lost at home to an ACC opponent since 2016. Ridiculous. Last little note I have here, once again, Mastro continues to do a good job punting inside the 20. The guy's money. And then props to Fitzy. Only had 1 field goal attempt, but he made it. 48 yards, which I was nervous when he kicked it. They clearly have confidence in him this year, and you read that in the preseason he was looking a little better. But so far, so good from Fitzy. I think that made him 4 for 4. But anyway, not going to dive any more into the special teams except to say that the punt coverage continues to remain really good. The punt return, I think Keon's just there to simply catch the ball. And I'm fine with that, by the way. 1, obviously, catch the ball. 2, I don't want to get hurt on a return. If all he does is fair catch and doesn't muff any, fine by me. All right, well, that's it. That's all. Enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy this 4-0 start. Heck, enjoy the next week because the Noles are on bye. Just get to soak this up, talk some trash. Guess I could point out what some of the rivals did. Or at least, Miami beat Temple, who's a nobody. Florida only scored 22 against Charlotte, the old 49ers. Some upcoming opponents, Duke boat race their cupcake team. Play Duke in, I think 3 games from now. You're going to have to play well to beat them. I'm not saying Duke's more talented. They're not. You still should beat Duke. But I think if you come out and play a bad game, like how you played against BC, how you played in stretches of this Clemson game, Duke could beat you. But worry about that when the time comes. Instead, I'm enjoy the team being 4-0. I'd say it's highly likely they're 6-0 because they play Virginia Tech and Syracuse before they play Duke. So we'll see what happens when they get to Duke and Miami, and if they wind up facing North Carolina down the road in the championship game. But for now, gotta like this team ceiling. We've seen the floor now. It's maybe not as high as we thought, but can't complain. You could point out some flaws, but I'm just gonna soak this up. Soak it up. This should be a fun season all the way through November. We should see November and still be, I think, having hopes of grandeur. So, all right, that's it. That's all. Till next time. I'm out.